continue the discussion on the shifting bottleneck heuristic. Let me begin with a quick recap of what we saw in the earlier lecture. So, we are trying to solve the problem of minimizing make span in a job shop. We have already seen dispatching rule based solutions. For example, we have seen this Gantt chart which has been prepared with shortest processing time as the dispatching rule. So, if we use shortest processing time as the dispatching rule for this problem instance, we get a make span of 40. We are now trying to see another approach which helps us to solve the make span minimization problem on the job shop. We also said that in a job shop, as given in the example problem, each job has a definite route. So, J1 will go through M1, M3, M2 and so on. In this example, all the jobs visit all the machines. So, a feasible schedule will require that each machine now treats the job visit in a certain order. For example, if we go back to the SPT solution, in this solution the jobs visit M1 in the order J1, J2, J3, M2 in the order J2, J1, J3 and M3 in the order J1, J2, J3. So, one other way of describing a schedule is to determine the order in which the jobs are going to visit the machines. In any case, if we see here, job 1 has to visit all the 3 machines, but we are interested in taking each machine and the order in which the jobs come in. That is the variable part which we are actually trying to optimize. If we are able to get the correct order, in the sense at the moment if the order on M1 is J1, J2, J3, order on M2 is J2, J1, J3 and order on M3 is J1, J2, J3, the make span is 40. So, the question can be posed differently as what is the order such that this make span is minimized. Also, we have to ensure that this order is satisfied, that J1 will first visit M1 and then M3 and then M2, which has been satisfied by the Gantt chart schedule. We also now have a network representation which we have seen. Now, the definite orders for the jobs, for example, J1 will visit M1, M3, M2 is shown here as J1. Here Ij, J represents the job and I represents the machine. So, J1 first visits M1, then M3 and then M2 and finishes. So, this part has been shown through these fixed arrows in this network and through dark lines here. What are shown through dotted lines is the decision that we have to make. For example, since a machine can process only one job at a time. So, if we take machine 1, then machine 1 figures here for J1, here for J2 and here for J3. So, what we do is we draw 2 arcs which are dotted, joining one to this in this direction and the other in the other direction. So, for every pair we have that. So, since we have 3 jobs, we actually have 1 to 2, 1 to 3 and 2 to 3, each has 2 arcs. So, we have 6 dotted arcs. The ones related to machine 2 are shown in yellow and the ones related to machine 3 are shown in a kind of a dark brownish pink color. So, we now have to find out if we take if we take machine 1 alone, out of these 6 arcs we actually find in the end only 2 arcs will be active. Which 2 are active is what we have to find out. If we want to map the SPT sequence on this, and for example, if we take M2, then the order is J1, J2, J1 and J3, which means on M2 it will be 2 to 1 and 1 to 3. So, on M2 it will be first 2 to 1, which means 2 to 1 and then 1 to 3. So, out of these 6 arcs which are in yellow, the 2 to 1 here 2 to 1 and then 1 to 3 will be active. Now, we wish to find out for each machine which will be the active arcs out of the dotted arcs. So, we set out to do that, and then we also related this aspect to solving a 1 RJ Lmax problem on the bottleneck machine. We also identified first M3 as the first bottleneck machine by first calculating the loads on each of these machines. So, M1 has a load of 7 plus 4 11 plus 8 19, M2 has a load of 10 plus 6 16 plus 8 24, and M3 has a load of 8 plus 12 20 plus 7 27. So, we took M3 as the first bottleneck machine, and then we solved a 1 RJ Lmax problem, which means problem of minimizing the maximum tardiness on a single machine with release times. So, 1 RJ Lmax on M3. So, we solved a 1 RJ Lmax problem, where 1 represents single processor, RJ means release times for job j, and Lmax means maximum tardiness that we wish to minimize. So, we solved this problem on M3, and then we got the sequence 1 J1, J2, J3, which minimized this. So, we got the sequence J1, J2, J3 on M3 with Lmax equal to 7. Now, we have to put the solution or superimpose the solution on this network. So, we have solved for the third machine. So, we have solved for this set of 6 arcs, and then we have J1, J2, J3 coming in, which means on M3 we will first do J1, and then we will do J2, and then we will do J3. So, on M3 we will first do J1. So, this is 3 1 would mean job 1 on machine 3. First we do this, then we do from this. So, this arc becomes active, this arc becomes active, and then from here we will do this. So, this arc becomes active. The rest of the dotted pink arcs are now removed because they are no longer required. So, we will remove this, we would also remove all this. So, we just have these 2 arcs coming in to the picture. Now, if we find the let us mark it again with a thicker line. Now, the longest path of the net on the network gives once again a lower bound to the make span. Earlier, the longest path on this network was the sum of the job processing times 7 plus 8 15 plus 10 25, 6 plus 4 10 plus 12 22, 8 plus 8 16 plus 7 23. But now, with the inclusion of these 2 arcs, if we compute the longest path on this network, the longest path on this network would become 34. So, let us just show that computation of the longest path on this network. So, let us say we start with 0 for this. So, this comes at 7. It depends on how we write it, because it is activity on node network. So, we could say that this one finishes at 7 from here. So, this would mean 7 plus 8 15, 15 plus 10 25. Now, what we do is this is 6, this is 6 plus 4 10. Now, this one will be 15 plus 12 27, 10 plus 12 22, so 27. Now, this will be 8, 8 plus 8 16. Now, this will be 16 plus 7 23, 27 plus 7 34 and the finish will be 34. Now, the lower bound on the make span increases and it becomes 34, 27 plus 7. More importantly, it is the longest path on the network. Now, we look at the next bottleneck, which is M2, and then we try and solve the 1 RJ L max problem on M2. On M2 with 34, which is the lower bound of the make span. So, that is updated as the final due date. So, with due date equal to 34, we solve 1 RJ L max on M2. So, we have J1, J2 and J3, and we have the processing times Pj on M2. So, J1 on M2 is 10, J2 on M2 is 6 and J3 on M2 is 8. Then we write Rj and Dj. Rj is the release time, time at which it is available, and Dj is the due date. Now, if we look at M2 and we look at J1, so J1 on M2 is the third operation. So, earliest J1 is available on M2 is 7 plus 8, 15. So, 15 is the time earliest that J1 is available on M2, because J1 has to finish processing on M1 and M3, and the earliest it can be available is 7 plus 8. So, Rj is 15 here. Now, as far as J2 is concerned, M2, as far as J2 is concerned, J2 on M2 is the first operation, therefore, the earliest it is available is 0. As far as J3 is concerned, M2 is the second machine, and therefore, the earliest J3 can be available at M2 is at time equal to 8. Now, as far as the due dates are concerned, J1 on M2 is the last operation. So, it is enough if it is available at time equal to 34. As far as J2 is concerned, J2 on M2 is the first operation. So, the latest due date, the farthest we can think of is 12 plus 4, 16. It definitely requires at least 16 more units to finish. So, the due date can be 34 minus 16, which is 18. And as far as J3 is concerned, it is once again the last operation. J3 on M2 is last but one operation. So, at least 7 more units are required, therefore, the due date can be 34 minus 7, which is 27. So, now we have to solve a 1 Rj L max on M2. So, we start with the starting node and then we put J1 as the first job, we start another sequence with J2 and we start another sequence with J3 as the first job. So, when we do this, let us start writing the completion times. Now, when we put J1 as the first job, J1 is available only at time equal to 15. So, completion time is 25 for J1, and then by the preemptive EDD rule, we would, based on the due dates, we have J2 and then J3. Now, J2 is available at time equal to 0. So, J2 can finish at 31, because it is available at 25 plus another 6 is 31. By 31, J3 is also available, which is available at 8. So, 31 plus 8, 39. Due dates are 34, 18 and 27. So, here L max is 13, here L max is 12. So, lower bound on L max is equal to 13. Now, when we start with J2, so J2 is available at time equal to 0, so it will finish at 6, and then J3 and then J1 by the EDD rule. Now, this is available at 8, this is available only at 15, so you have to definitely wait till 8. So, 8 plus 8 16. Now, this is available at 15, 16 plus 10 26. Now, the due dates are 18, 27 and 34. So, lower bound on L max is equal to 0 because all of them are within the due dates. And we also realize that actually what we have done is we have evaluated a feasible solution with 2, 3 and 1 with L max equal to 0. This is a feasible solution with J2 first, then J3 and then J1 with L max equal to 0. Therefore, we can stop the algorithm here itself. For a maximum tardiness problem, if you have a solution with maximum tardiness equal to 0, a feasible solution with 0, then it is optimal. So, we could stop right here and say that the sequence on J2 on M2 is J2, J3 and J1. So, it is J2, J3 and J1. Now, we superimpose this on M2. So, M2 is shown with the yellow color. So, these 6 arcs are there. So, the sequence is J2, J3 and J1. So, first on M2 we will first do J2, then we will do J3 and then we will do J1. So, we have to update this. So, first we do J2, so we do this first, then we do J3. So, we come to 3 and after that we go to 1 through this. So, this is the sequence that will happen on machine M2. Now, with this sequence we now need to update the lower bound. So, the longest path on this network will give us an updated value of the lower bound. So, that obviously the lower bound now can only be 34 or more because we are adding arcs on this network. Therefore, the longest path cannot decrease. So, we now have to once again find what are these node labels, so that we find out the lower bound on the make span. So, this is at 7, this is again at 15, so this is at 27. Now, this is at 8. Now, this one is 6 plus 8 14, but then we have 8 plus 8 16, so this stays. Now, this will become 16 plus 8 16 plus 10 26, whereas earlier it was 15 plus 10 25. So, this will become 26. Otherwise 15 plus 12 27, 27 plus 7 34, 16 plus 7 23 34. So, the lower bound remains at 34 with this. The only change in the label is the change here, that this is 16 plus another 10 26, whereas here it was 15 plus 10 25 earlier. So, the lower bound does not change with the inclusion of these 2 arcs, but only one of the node labels changes. So, now we look at the third machine, which is M1. We have already seen M3 and M2. So, we now need to do a 1 RJ L max on M1. So, we do a 1 RJ L max on M1 with the same due date as 34, because the longest path in this network right now is 34. We now solve the 1 RJ L max problem on the third machine. Which is machine M1. we have already solved the 1 RJ L max problems for M3 and then M2. So now from this network we observe that the processing times for the 3 jobs J1, J2, J3 on M1 are 7, for J2 it is 4 and for J3 it is 8. Now we have to compute the release times Rj as well as the due dates Dj. So if we take job J1 on M1, now the earliest this is available as time equal to 0, so Rj will be 0 for this. Now here the earliest this is made available is after it goes through this machine, therefore Rj will be 6, and as far as J3 on M1 is concerned, the earliest it is available is at time equal to 0. Now we look at the due dates. The due date remains as 34. Now when we look at this, the longest path that connects will be 7 plus 8 15 plus 10 27, so 34. So 34 minus 7 is 27, 27 minus 12 is 15, 15 minus 8 is 7. So due date for this will have to be 7, because the longest path is 7 plus 8 15 plus 12 27 plus 7 34. Now as far as this is concerned, the longest path would be from here. So 34 minus 7 27, 27 minus 12 will be 15 for this to come. So due date will be 15, and for J3 which is here, the 34 minus 10 plus 8 would give us 17, 34 minus 15 would give us 19, so this will become 17. So let me compute this again. Now as far as J3 on M1 is concerned, this is the one. So 7 minus 8 15 would give us 19. From this side it will be 10 minus 8 18, therefore at time equal to 16 this should be available, so that 16 plus 18 becomes 34. So this is not 17, this becomes 16. So let me again explain the computation of the due dates. J1 on M1 is here, and the longest path is 7 plus 8 15 plus 12 27 plus 7 34, which gives us this 34. So in order to meet this deadline of 34, this should be over by time equal to 7 plus 12 19 plus 8 27. So 34 minus the remaining processing time of 27 gives us a due date of 7. Now as far as this is concerned, once again in the due date earliest or latest that this has to be completed comes from 12 plus 7, it has remaining 19 time units of processing, and since it has to finish at 34, the due date will be 15. Now as far as J3 is concerned, we are here. So again we go through the path. So 34 is the final, at the moment the make span is 34. So 10 plus 8 18 more time units of processing is required. So the due date becomes 16 for this. Now with this data we now try and solve a 1 RJ L max problem on machine 1. So we now begin with J1 as the first job in the sequence, J2 as the first job, and J3 as the first job in the sequence. So when we look at J1 as the first job in the sequence, now it is available at time equal to 0, therefore, the completion time will be 7. Following the earliest due date sequence, we try to get J2 inside. So, J2 is available at 6, now the machine is available at 7, so this will become 7 plus 4 11, by which time J3 is available, so plus 8 19. So, these are the completion times. The due dates are 7, 15 and 16. So, only one job is tardy. So, from this we find that L max is 3. There is only one tardy job, so it gives us L max equal to 3. We also observe that we get a feasible solution when we actually apply this preemptive EDD rule, we get a feasible solution with L max equal to 3. Now, with J2 as the first job in the sequence, so J2 starts at 6, completion time is 10. Now, going by the preemptive due date, J1 comes next. So, J1 starts at 10 and finishes at 17, by which time J3 is available. So, J3 will take 17 plus 8 25. So, now the due dates are 7 15. For job 2 the due date is 15, for job 1 the due date is 7, and for job 3 the due date is 16. So, this gives us a solution with L max equal to 9. Now, this job, this is the sequence, this is J2, J1, J3, this is J1, J2, J3. So, the sequence J2, J1, J3 will give us a solution with L max equal to 9. Now, this job is early, this job is tardy with due date equal to 7 and completion time equal to 17. So, L max is equal to 10 from this, and for J3 due date is 16, completion time is 25. So, tardiness is 9, so maximum tardiness is 10. Now, if we consider the third one with J3 as the first job, preemptive EDD would give us the order J3 followed by the lowest one J1 and then J2. So, we get J1, J2. So, here the completion times will be starts at 0 and finishes at 8. J1 is available at time equal to 0, so finishes at 15, by which time J2 is available, so this finishes at 19. Now, due dates are 16 for J3, 7 for J1 and 15 for J2. Now, we realize that J3 is ahead of the due date. This is behind the due date by 8 units, this is behind by 6 units. So, we get L max equal to 8. Now, in these 3 nodes what we have done is we have started with J1, J2 and J3, and we are able to get feasible solutions by applying the preemptive earliest due date rule. We may also compute the lower bound and proceed, but finally when we solve this problem we will get this solution with minimum L max equal to 3. So, one RJ L max problem talks about the sequence J1, J2, J3 on M1 with L max equal to 3. Now, we go back and try to map this on this network. So, on M1 the sequence is J1, J2, J3. So, J1 first, then J2 and then J3. So, we map this. So, J1 to J2 will come here, and then we will do J2 to J3, which will now come here. So, now this is the final network, where on M1 J1 followed by J2 followed by J3. Now, we have to compute the longest path. And update it. Now, we do the computation of the node labels. So, we have 7 plus 8 15, and this one will become 8 plus 8 16 plus 10 26. Now, this will become 7 plus 4 11 instead of 6 plus 4 10. So, this will become 7 plus 4 11. Now, this node will become 11 plus 8 19, this will become 19. So, this will become 19 plus 8 27, 27 plus 7 34, but 8 27 plus 10 will become 37 here. Now, this one will become 11 plus 12 23, 15 plus 12 27. So, finally, the longest duration will be the maximum of 37, 27 and 34, and we will get a solution with 37. Now, the make span is 37, and we have a feasible solution with make span equal to 37. You may also observe that earlier the make span was 34, we computed L max equal to 3. So, the L max gets added and 34 finally becomes 37, which is the make span for the sequence obtained using the shifting bottleneck heuristic. Now, one way of representing it is on this network, the other way of representing it is on the familiar Gantt chart, and now we will represent this schedule on the familiar Gantt chart, which we are used to. So, we will now represent it on the Gantt chart. On the Gantt chart, this will be M1, this is M2, and this is M3. So, the sequence on M1 from this comes from 1 1, 1 2 and 1 3. So, the sequence is J1, J2, J3. Now, on M2 we realize that this is first. So, J2, J3 and then J1. So, J2, J3 and J1, and on M3 it is again 1, 2 and 3. So, J1, J2 and J3. Now, we have to map this on the Gantt chart. So, we look at J1, J1 first goes for processing on M1. So, J1 on M1 finishes at 7, and at 7 J1 goes to M3. So, J1 goes to M3. Now, J1 is actually the first job on M3. So, J1 has come at time equal to 7, and it will start at time equal to 7. J1 on M3 will start at 7 and finish at 15. And at 15 J1 will go to M2. So, J1 comes here at 15. J1 is the third job to be processed on M2. So, we will just leave J1 here and we will take up J1 after J2 and J3 have been processed. Now, we look at this. J2's first operation is on M2. So, J2 will start at time equal to 0 and finish at 6. So, J2 will start at time equal to 0 and finish at 6, and at 6 J2 will come to M1. So, at 6 J2 comes to M1. Now, J2 is the second job to be done on M1 and J1 is the first. So, J1 is already over, J2 has come at 6. So, it will take up J2. So, J2 on M1 will be 7 plus 4, 11. And J2 will now move at time equal to 11 to M3. So, J2 will come here, J2 will come at 11. Now, as far as M3 is concerned, J1 is already over, J2 is the second job. So, J2 is ready. So, J2 on M3, J2 starts at 15, takes 12 units of time from here, and therefore 15 plus 12, 27, J2 will finish, and J2 completes all the 3 activities at time equal to 27. Now, let us look at J3. J3's first operation is on M1. So, J3 will be taken up at time equal to 11 and it will go from 11 to 19. So, this will go from 11 to 19. So, J3 will finish at 19 and J3 will come to M2 at time equal to 19. So, J3 will come here at time equal to 19. Now, J3 is the second job, J2 is already done. So, J3 will start at 19. So, J3 on M2 will be 19 plus 8, 27. So, J3 will finish at 27 and at 27 J3 will now go to M3. So, J3 will come here at 27. Now, J1, J2 are already completed, J3 is the only one available. So, J3 on M3 is another 7. So, J3 will start at 27 and J3 will finish at 34. So, J3 will finish everything at time equal to 34. Now, we look at J1. J1 has actually come here at time equal to 15. So, J1 on M2 is another 10. So, this can start at 27 only, takes 10 more time units and finishes at 37. So, J1 will finish at 37, which is indeed the make span, and this 37 is the same as this 37 that we have computed. So, we can do either of these. Now, from the shifting bottleneck solution, we can map it onto the Gantt chart like we did. If we get a Gantt chart solution, it is also possible to map it onto this network, and the longest path on this network will be the same as the longest of the bars on the Gantt chart, and for this problem the make span is 37. Now, we have to check whether this make span is optimal or does the shifting bottleneck heuristic guarantee optimality. The answer is the shifting bottleneck heuristic does not guarantee optimality. What it tries to do is, either when we look at it through this network or through the Gantt chart, it takes one machine at a time and tries to find an optimum sequence, not for the make span problem, but for the 1 RJ L max problem. And then it adds on this L max into the existing make span and updates the existing make span. So, on the one hand, it solves an optimization problem for a particular machine, but the order in which the machines are taken is now based on the loads. So, here we took the machines in the order M3 followed by M2 followed by M1. This order need not be the optimal order. Therefore, the shifting bottleneck heuristic does not guarantee the optimum solution, even though it solves an optimization problem at each stage. We also have to observe that one RJ L max problem is actually a difficult problem to solve, but luckily the branch and bound that we used is able to solve problems of reasonable number of jobs optimally. Therefore, we are convinced that we can use the 1 RJ L max on a single machine and apply it sequentially on the machines. The thumb rule that we used here, we first did it on M3, then on M2 and then on M1, because our choice was based on the workload on each of these machines. Now, this particular order of applying the 1 RJ L max need not be optimum. So, shifting bottleneck heuristic does not guarantee the optimal solution, but it provides an excellent alternative to a dispatching rule based approach to solve the problem, because any dispatching rule based solution would give us a certain Gantt chart. Now, this Gantt chart on one hand computes the makespan, on the other also tells us the order in which the jobs are going to be processed on each machine. Now, this order can always be mapped onto the network and the longest path would give us. Alternately, the shifting bottleneck heuristic solves a 1 RJ L max problem on each machine and then tries to find out this order on each machine and maps it on to the network. So, this is a very powerful heuristic, does not guarantee optimality and is completely different from a dispatching rule based approach, even though in principle both the dispatching rule based approach as well as the shifting bottleneck heuristic try to find out what is the best sequence of jobs on each of these machines. Now, this method became very popular largely because of its ability to give optimum solutions in many instances and close to optimum solutions in many instances as well. In fact, if one looks at the job shop scheduling literature, there are three important or difficult problems which are called the Fisher and Thomson problems, and particularly the second of the Fisher and Thomson problems, for which people knew the optimum makespan, but were not able to get that comfortably using dispatching rules. The shifting bottleneck heuristic for that particular problem instance gave the optimum solution. So, the shifting bottleneck heuristic is important for many reasons. One, it is able to provide very good solutions, even though not optimal on all occasions, it is able to give optimum on many instances and close to optimum on very many instances. It provides an alternative to a dispatching rule based approach to solve a job shop scheduling problem, because this sequence 1 2 3 or 2 3 1 1 2 3, or suppose we take a shortest processing time based Gantt chart, then it gives a certain sequence for each machine that is obtained through a dispatching rule. Here the corresponding sequence is obtained by solving a 1 RJ L max or by solving an optimization problem. Therefore, it can give better solutions than using a single dispatching rule. So, this is used effectively used to solve job shop scheduling problems to minimize makespan. Now, in the line balancing problem, essentially we use the line balancing idea in assembly and also these ideas can be used in manufacturing. Now, what is the assembly line balancing problem? Now, let us assume that we are trying to assemble a product. Now, this assembly involves assembling or fixing several components and sub assemblies into a main assembly. So, first and foremost in the assembly problem, there are components that are brought into the assembly, and assembly of each one of them is now called a task. So, an assembly would involve 10 or 12 or 15 tasks, where 15 different sub assemblies and components are assembled into a final product or final assembly. Now, each task also has a processing time or a task time. So, there is a time associated with each of these tasks. Now, many times if there are 10 or 12 parts and sub assemblies that go to the assembly, there has to be an order in which these have to be assembled. Therefore, there are precedence relationships which may say that I cannot assemble or I cannot do task 3 unless I finish task 2. So, an assembly line balancing problem, the data that are required to do this are the number of tasks, the time on for each of these tasks, and the precedence relationship of the assembly. So, let me take an example to explain all these and then try and use the same example to solve the line balancing problem. So, this network shows an assembly line balancing problem with 11 tasks which are shown as 1 to 11 as nodes of the network. Now, the task times are shown as the arcs, and these are 4, 2, 3, 6, 1, 6, 8, 2, 5, 6 and 4. Now, the numbers shown in yellow are the time taken to do each of these tasks, and they are shown as node labels, labels associated with the node. The precedence is captured through the arcs. For example, from this network one can say that we can perform task 2 after we have performed task 1. Task 1 is the preceding activity for task 2. Similarly, task 1 should precede task 4. Similarly, 3 and 5 should precede 6, which means 6 cannot be done till 3 and 5 are completed, 6 cannot be taken up, and so on. So, the precedence relationship are captured in the form of these arcs on this network. Now, without loss of generality, we can assume that the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 is feasible. So, there is a feasible solution to this problem. For example, we will not have a situation where 1 has to precede 2, 2 has to precede 3 and 3 has to precede 1. So, we will not have that. So, we would say that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 is feasible, which also means that if we have one operator sitting and doing all the assembly of 1 to 11, then the operator can come with a finished product or an assembly. And if we assume that these task times are in minutes, then if one person does it and does it in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, then the total time that will be taken is 4 plus 6, 10, 12, 15, 16, 22, 30, 32, 38, 43 plus 4, 47 units of time. Every 47 units we will see that an output comes. Many times what happens is these assemblies may also require certain skills like delicate assembly or testing after the assembly is completed and so on. So, many times if we want to really increase the output of this, we need more operators sitting. So, if 2 operators sit and if both the operators actually assembled everything, then we would get 2 pieces in 47 time units, which means effectively 1 piece in 23 and a half time units. But that would involve, for example, creating, if activity number 6 is a testing activity, and that would involve creating 2 test benches with the same testing equipment. So, if we are going to have a situation where we have several operators sitting and each one of them doing the entire thing, then the output can be 47 divided by the number of operators. But many times such a thing would not be feasible, because that would mean duplicating a lot of resources that are required for each one of them. Therefore, it is customary in assembly line balancing that one operator is given 2 or 3 tasks or certain number of tasks, and the assembly moves to the next operator who carries out certain number of tasks and so on. So that each operator would have a workbench, and there will be a time taken by each operator in the workbench. Now, if we assume that we are going to have 11 workbenches, where task 1 is done in workbench 1, task 2 in bench 2, task 3 in bench 3 and so on, and if we put 11 operators, 1 for each, and assuming that each operator has the skill to do that activity, then if we start the line with 11 like this, if we start the line here, at the end of 47 time units, 1 piece will come out, the first piece will come out. But then the second piece would have started by then, and at steady state the output of this with 11 desks and benches or workstations and 11 operators will actually be the maximum of the time, which is 8 time units. So, if we create a situation with 11 workbenches and 1 operator doing each, so the output can be 1 in 8 minutes, as long as we do not have parallel workstations. So, if we have one workstation sequential and each workstation is carrying out one task, so with 11 workstations if we proceed, we will have an output every 8 minutes, and that is called the cycle time. So, the cycle time in this case will be 8 minutes. If we have 11 workstations, but then if we have only one operator who first goes to workstation 1, finishes the assembly, takes it, goes to workstation 2, finishes the assembly and so on, then the cycle time will be 47 minutes. So, as long as we do not have parallel stations, the realistic cycle time that we can achieve in this case is anything between 8 minutes and 47 minutes. So, the problem that we wish to solve is, given a cycle time t minutes, what is the minimum number of workstations that we require? What are the tasks that have to be carried out in each of these workstations, or what is the allocation of the task to each workstation, such that the workstation time is less than or equal to capital T, we have minimum number of workstations that is required, and the precedence relationship that we have described is not violated by the unidirectional flow that we want to have amongst the workstations. Now, that problem is called the line balancing problem, and that problem is also generally solved using heuristic algorithms. So, we will see some aspects of line balancing and the heuristic algorithm in the next lecture.